Good afternoon. This is Kelly Dyer Fry, editor of the Oklahoman, and I am here today with Governor George Nigh.
Thank you.
George, we're going to start out here by you telling me, how many times have you been governor?
Well, technically, I've been governor 4 times.
4 times, okay.
Which, under the Constitution now, you can only serve 2 terms.
Exactly.
But twice when I was lieutenant governor, 2 governors resigned early, and I became governor for short terms. So my first term as governor was 1959. No, excuse me, I have to stop and think. 1963.
Okay.
When Senator Kerr died and Governor Edmondson resigned, I was lieutenant governor, so Governor Edmondson resigned, I became governor and appointed him to the United States Senate.
Right.
So I finished out Edmondson's term as governor, but there was only, 9 days left.
Right.
And then when David Bourne was elected to the United States Senate, he resigned early as governor so he could go take his oath and keep seniority in the United States Senate. I became governor my second term for 6 days. So when I was really elected governor in 78, took office in 79, I'd been governor twice before, but for a total of 15 days. So technically, legally and technically and officially, I've been 4 times governor.
Oh, there you go. Has anybody else been governor that many times?
No one's ever been governor more than twice.
Right. Nobody beat your record. Yeah. Okay, we're here today because today is Oklahoma's birthday.
Yes, happy birthday.
That's right. Happy birthday, Oklahoma. And we are
108 years old, having joined the Union November 16th, 1907.
All right. That's a great history lesson today.
I remember, before we started this interview, I said, I need to tell you what Donna said when I told her I was coming down here for the interview. And she said, just think, you've been here for all of Oklahoma's statehood history except 20 years. I said, whoa. I was born in 27, so I've seen a lot of Oklahoma history. I'm very proud of it. I love it. And strangely, I never thought about it, but back in the days when I was elected to the legislature, I ran for office when I was a senior at East Central University, 1950, and was elected to become the youngest member of that session, not ever, but that session. But in those days, the legislature only met every other year. And strangely enough, the courts had held that a teacher was not a state job. So let me back up and say, they offered me a job to teach when I wasn't in the legislature. But the Constitution says, the law says, you can't have 2 state jobs at the same time. And the courts had held that a teacher is not a state employee. They're a district employee. So McAllister Public Schools hired me to teach. I'd teach a year and a half, then come to the legislature for 5 months, go back home, teach for a year and a half, come to the legislature. And so I taught Oklahoma history.
Of course.
So it's appropriate I come here today and say happy birthday.
Yes, it is. And I believe the Oklahoma song has special meaning to you.
Well, it does. I go back to the Oklahoma song, excuse me, to 1943, when I was in high school at McAllister, and I was up on the back porch studying one Saturday night, and listening to the Lucky Strike hit parade. Lucky Strike cigarettes sponsored the hit parade every Saturday night, the countdown of the 10 most popular songs in America. I'm sitting there just, I was a sophomore in high school, whatever it was, and number 9, number 8, number 7, then down on the roll of the drums, number 1. And I just sat up and I said, they're singing about my state. And they were singing Oklahoma. That was 1943. So then in 1953, as a member of the legislature, I thought that song ought to be our official state song. And so I'm very proud to say that I introduced legislation to make Oklahoma from the musical the state song. And it came from a musical about our state that was the most popular musical in the history of Broadway and entertainment in the world. it's popular all over the world.
That's pretty
And I thought it would be appropriate. So you can say we have the most best-known state song of any state in the Union.
Very nice. So just tell me an Oklahoma memory you had, George, of a time when you were most proud maybe of our state.
Well, I always hate to single out the most proud or the best or the highest, but I think back.
Just a special memory for you.
Well, my special memory comes from, excuse me, from teaching it. So I always think about it, but I think the fact that Oklahoma is such a unique state, to me, different than any other state in the Union. We're made up of a lot of different things.
Right.
And if you just remember that the Native Americans were Trail of Tears, etc., forced into this unclaimed land, or this American land, unassigned lands and all that, into what became most of Oklahoma. And we have all these tribes that came in, so we have all these, and they were non-natural citizens at the time. They were people who were brought here from someplace else. And then I just think of what was put together to make us so unusual. The Panhandle, for example, was a part of Texas, no man's land. Texas wanted to join was a free country. You know, they rebelled against Mexico, became the country of Texas, and then decided to ask to be a state in the Union. But we had our laws then dealing with slavery that said any state that owns land north of a certain line cannot own slaves. The whole state. And so Texas wanted to come in as a state that could have slaves, so they just whopped off the northern part of what is the Texas Panhandle. And that became no man's land. So those 3 counties of the Oklahoma Panhandle didn't belong to anybody.
Right, right.
And so when we applied for admission to the Union, Teddy Roosevelt, President of the United States, just reached out and told his people, just hook this no man's land onto this and put it as part of Oklahoma. And that's how it became a part of our state. And so we're so unusual in history. I think it's interesting if I said, say you and I own farms, so you're from El Reno, and say I'm from Yukon, and we own a farm, and there's a river that's the boundary of our farmland.
Right.
Where would you say the boundary of our land is? It's generally, under the law, the main stream, the main fork, the main part of the water. So I would own halfway out, but wherever that main fork went is where it went. Well, all of the Red River belongs to Oklahoma. The main fork, the main part of the river is not the boundary. Because when the United States bought the Louisiana Purchase in 1803, it came up from New Orleans, and they had in the Purchase, came up to New Orleans, came up to up the Mississippi to the Red River, came up the Red River, then crossing the river went north at a certain point. And so Texas had said that half of the river was theirs. And so we went to the Supreme Court, and the point of this, you need to read the small print. Because when we did the Louisiana Purchase, they included the phrase, you come up to the Red River, you travel to the northwest until you reach a certain point, then crossing the river, you proceed north. The phrase, then crossing the river, the courts held that meant that what they bought was on the south side of the river. Now, the reason that's important was all that oil in the riverbed back in those days became Oklahoma oil.
Wow, wow.
Instead of Texas oil.
That is important.
Isn't that important?
It is.
And then you read the small print, you come up in the Louisiana Purchase, another Supreme Court case, is you came up the Red River, and then when you get so far, you go north. Well, they came to a fork in the road, the river.
Right.
And they took the North Fork instead of the South Fork. And the Supreme Court held, and so 3 counties in Oklahoma, I think it's Jackson, Greer, the three counties in
Right.
I'm sorry, I'm so blank.
Right.
I just went blank on it.
Yeah.
In southwest Oklahoma, Harmon.
Okay.
Those three counties used to be in Texas.
Wow.
But we had the court read it said you go up the North Fork,
Right.
and that they took the wrong fork, and so the Supreme Court said they should have kept going this way.
Right.
So that land that they took the wrong fork of the river
Right.
was moved from Texas to Oklahoma. So to me, that's so intriguing to think,
is.
here we are, we're in great shape for the shape we're in, we're in great shape. But Teddy Roosevelt gave us no man's land.
Right.
Supreme Court gave us to the
three
south side
counties.
of the river and 3 counties in Texas.
Right. Well, that's great.
Yeah. And then the other interesting thing is that we, at one point in time, most of all of what is Oklahoma was assigned to a Native American tribe. But after the Civil War, the courts and the government took the western part of the land away from the tribes. So you had Indian territory, and then they opened it up to Oklahoma territory, the runs and that sort of stuff.
Right.
And so the Native Americans said, "Hey, they're getting ready to join the Union. There's a big movement, to join the Union." And the Indian tribes said, "Oh, we don't want to be a part of them." So they had a constitutional convention and applied for admission to the Union as the state of Sequoia. And Teddy Roosevelt, according to history, said, no, we don't want 2 states. And it's kind of funny, his reasoning, each state got 2 senators.
Wow.
And if he'd allowed Sequoia and Oklahoma to come in, there'd have been 4 Democratic United States senators. He said, no, combine them, they can only have 2.
Wow.
Now, I'm grateful for that because he made Oklahoma what it is. And it made sense to me also. Forget the politics of it. It just made sense that the state of Sequoia and the territory of Oklahoma came in together as Oklahoma, adding in the Panhandle. Right. That's us.
Well, that is
108 years.
That's a great history lesson for us
Sorry,
today.
I got wound up.
That's okay. I knew you would. That's why we invited you in.
Yeah.
So, happy birthday,
Oh,
Oklahoma.
happy birthday to Oklahoma. But let me just close with this.
Okay.
The best part about the past is looking forward to the future. And I'm so proud of the history of this state that put us together, but I'm more even excited about what we can do down the road. And I hope our young people will look forward to what they can do for this state.
Well, thank you,
Thank you.
Governor,
Thank you.
for our history lesson, and happy birthday, Oklahoma.